Once again, welcome back. As a series of OWASP Docker Top 10, we already covered till D09. Here we are going to discuss about D010, that is logging. And also it will cover the monitoring as well. So we are going to see what exactly the logging, and why the logs matter, and what should be logged. In logs, what need to be included, and what is the impact of missing logs, and how the attackers exploit a weak logging mechanism, and how to identify a weak logs, and what are the some best practices for logging, as well as monitor and act on the logs, how to take care of those, and some key takeaways of this. So without further ado, let's have a discussion around it. First in, first out, this particular logging is the one of the most critical security control in container environment. Like without proper logging mechanism, you cannot detect what exactly is happening, and you cannot investigate the incidents, as well as prove the compliance points. And essential security for container environments, especially in the container environment. Why? Because containers are dynamic in nature and it is a short-lived. Let's say if you don't capture your logs properly, you may lose the visibility what happening inside your container or entire infrastructure. So here the D10 will come into picture, which is logging. Uh, it is one of the top priority from WAPs. Why? Because it enables some alerting mechanism, as well as uh, it is the one of the accountability, as well as it helps for forensics to investigate further. It's not just about collecting the data, and also it is making that particular data need to be useful for security investigations further. So that is the like use case and why the logging end came into picture. Here, let us discuss what is a logging. Here is just a simple points, which is self-explanatory, but we'll cover all the points about logging. Okay, basically recording events and activities in your application. Logging means keeping a track of everything of your application does, what exactly the application is doing. Let's say it is like a diary that records every event. Diary for your application. Okay, that might be any event, or that might be any action or any error. All will be stored in that logs, and it creates a permanent record of what happened and when it was happened. It stores the exact timestamp with what exactly the history is happened. Okay, what exactly the system behavior at the time, any action or any request response, or any storage has happened, anything, it will be stored along with the timestamp. Okay, this basically helps to understand what happened, when it was happened, and why it was happened. And the third point was it captures the system behavior, errors, and user actions. Whether if a login was failed, or a server was crashed, or any successful API call was happened, logs will capture each and every uh, particulars of this information. Okay, and it it is essential for debugging, as well as monitoring and security analysis. Let's say if you don't have your logs, you don't like have a good scope or much scope for debugging and maintaining some like to take some further actions to remediate that in the future. Okay, so if you have a logging mechanism, then that will help to analyze the security incidents for further monitoring purpose. Okay, and as I said, think like logs are just like a applications diary. Okay, it will enter like what exactly the behavior, error, user actions, whatever the information comes along with the timestamp, it will enter. That is what exactly the logging. Now let us see what is and why the logs are matters. Okay, here are the some security benefits as well as operational benefits. Let's see about some security benefits. Detects a security incidents. That means logs will help to spot the attackers in a real time. Let's say if there is any brute force attacks, or failed login attempts, or some suspicious API calls. Without any proper logs, you cannot investigate, or you need to go blindly and randomly you need to go. Okay. If you have your proper logs, then with the proper timestamp as well as error, you can easily find the issue and remediate further. And another security benefit was you can track the unauthorized access, um, when it was happened, what it was happened, and how it was happened. And it will helps to monitor the suspicious patterns also. By analyzing the logs, you can detect the anomalies. It is like repeated access to a sensitive endpoints, or some unusual traffic spikes. Based upon those logs information, you can monitor those suspicious activities. So here these are some security benefits. And coming to the operational benefits, it will help to debug the application issues. That means uh, that will show you error messages and traces also, how and what is the system behavior, what exactly caused for the issue. So debugging of the error or any incident will become easy. And the second one was monitor system performance. Uh, we can use the logs to track the response times and resource usage of the system and throughput. It will basically helps you to optimize the performance and scale the efficiency of the system. And the third point was we can meet the compliance requirements. Regulatories like PCI DSS, HIPAA, GDPR, it will require the audit trails. So proper logging mechanism will helps to pass the audits and approve the accountability. Okay, so that is why exactly the logging is matters. And coming to the next point where we will be discussing about what should be logged. Okay, especially in Docker and containers, these are the some examples what need to be considered and what need to be logged. First one was authentication. Okay, we need to make sure always log a authentication events like login as attempts, failures, privilege escalations. So these are the some key indicators of potential attackers. Okay, and the second one was container events. That means when it was started, when it was stopped, resource usage, and configuration changes. So this will helps to for performance fine tuning and incident response quickly. And the third point was network activity. Basically, in this includes connections, port access, as well as traffic patterns. Log all some network connections or port access and some traffic patterns. So this will helps to detect the unauthorized access and lateral movement for into a host system like that. And the fourth point was a file system. It includes file access, modifications, permission changes like that. So we can monitor the file access and if any changes and some permissions update. This basically helps to identify what tampering or any data exfiltration attempts. And the final point was application events. That includes error, transactions, API calls. So by capturing application level logs, uh, these are useful for debugging and understanding the user behavior. So here one key point was we need to make sure never log passwords, API keys, and personal data or secrets. We need to be careful whenever we are looking on this log setting up on this key areas like passwords, API keys, personal data, and secrets. So this will lead to a data leaks and compliance violations also. It should not be included in the logs. We need to explore this. Okay. And the next point where we will be discussing about impact of missing logs. Okay. Here are the some real security risk that will affect if we are not logged properly. Okay. The first point was blind to attacks. That means we cannot detect ongoing breaches. Without proper logs, we are just blinded to active threats. You cannot know if someone attacking your system until it's too late. And the second point was no forensics. That means cannot investigate what is happened. Um, so this is why you need logs to reconstruct the timeline or to understand what went wrong and when it went wrong. Instead of guessing or blind uh, going, better to have a logs for forensics. And the third point was compliance failures, some legal and regulatory violations. So many regulations require audit trials. Missing logs can lead to a compliance violations and fines or some legal uh, like penalties also. And the fourth point was extended damage. That means attackers go unnoticed for months. I mean, attacks can go unnoticed for months. We not even know like that particular attack was happened in past. Okay, so and also the final point was no accountability. That means we cannot track or trace who did and what they did. Whenever you have your logs, that will provide you accountability. Without them, you cannot prove who accessed it and what they accessed, when they accessed it. That's a very major risk in shared environment, especially. So without logs, you are flying blindly. Okay, so it will lead to potential threats. And here we will be discussing about some attack vectors. Sorry, how the attackers exploit the weak logging mechanism. Let's say if we have a weak logging mechanism, these are the some common attack vectors. Okay, what attackers target. One was log tampering. That means they can detect or modify the evidence of their activities. So without proper integrity checks, you may never know like where they came from. Okay, so that was actually the log tampering. And avoiding detection. That means they use techniques they know won't be logged. Okay, that means uh, this will be performed. This attack vector will be chosen, especially the skilled attackers. They use low noise methods like exploiting the unmonitored ports or some API calls to stay under the radar. Okay, and the third attack vector was persistent access. I mean, what exactly that means was maintaining a backdoor without leaving a traces. So without proper logging, attackers can install some backdoor or malwares and maintain the access for weeks or even months without, let's say, if you haven't noticed it. Why? Because there is no log mechanism, right? So there is no chance to be catch sooner. And the fourth and final attack vector was privilege escalations. That means escalating without triggering alerts. Whenever there is a weak logging mechanism, obviously there is no alert mechanism when the attackers gain the escalation privileges. That's one of the major blind spot for your security posture if you don't have a log mechanism. And here is some real world example of how they exploited a weak logging mechanism and attack vector also. So attackers compromises a container and disabled a logging and moves laterally through the network undetected for weeks. Okay, so this particular attack was happened because there is no logs were available to trace uh, what exactly their actions and what exactly is happened. Okay, that is the reason this particular real attack is happened. And here is the some underlying weak logs. Okay, here are the some red flags to check whether your logging mechanism or setup is weak or strong. Okay, the first one was missing logs. That means no authentication error or access logs. If you are not logging, especially the authentication attempts, errors, or access events, you are missing a critical visibility of the application or system. These are the some first things the attackers will target. And the second point was insufficient details. That includes like long long lag timestamps or user IDs or certain contexts also. So if let's say we don't have a logs, especially the timestamps or user IDs or some context, or obviously it is a useless, right? If you have a log mechanism and you haven't included these particularities in that logs, and if you don't include exactly these timestamps or user IDs or context, obviously you will be missing some critical data like when it was happening and who and what they did. Okay, and the third point was local only. That means logs stored only in the container itself. Let's say if the logs are stored inside a container, they will be lost when the container crashes or when the container restarts. Always make sure to have a habit of sending your logs to a external systems or mounting your volumes. Okay, and no rotation. That means logs fill up disk space and get a overwritten. That means without log rotation, your disk files will become more and older logs get deleted. Mm, It's a it's kind of a best habit for storing a logs for evidence for future response. And the final point here was unprotected. That means anyone can read, modify, or delete your logs. So the logs must be stored securely. If anyone can tamper with them, uh, attackers can erase their like traces and hide the malicious activities also. Okay, so that is why the unprotected logs also it's kind of a red flag to check. Okay, and here is some quick test. You need to make sure ask yourself if we were breached right now, would our logs tell us how and who and what. Okay, so that is the best activity you can do, or else you can cross check with yourself whenever you are working with especially the Docker. Okay, and Here we'll be discussing about some logging best practices, like how to fix those. Uh, let's say if there is any red flags like that. And first thing was centralize. That means we need to make sure to send the logs to a external systems like any ELK mechanism or Splunk like that. So basically, it will store. I mean, the Dockers will be ephemeral in nature. That will, let's say, if it was restarted or rebuilt, it won't store the logs, and that will be deleted. By maintaining a logs ingestional system, that will be like a centralized management. And we need to rotate. That means automatically we need to archive old logs to prevent the disk fills. By using some log rotation tools, we can achieve the old logs need to be deleted after certain limit was reached. So by this, we can keep your system up to date, and logs will be available for further investigation. And the third point was we need to make sure to protect those logs also, securing the logs files with a proper permissions, like only read only permissions for most of the users, and that will be protected from tampering by unauthorized or some external users. So by providing a proper file system access, you can control this protection mechanism. And the next point was structure. We need to make sure to use some JSON formats or like whatever the formats which is easier to analysis for further investigations. And the final point was time sync. We need to ensure the accurate timestamps across the containers need to be maintained. Why? Because if the timestamps in the container or else in within the like host system, if it is different, uh, and there is no like point of looking like different timestamp results, right? So that is why maintaining a time sync that will maintains a accurate time across the containers is important. So here is one of the best practice example command that need to be run whenever you are running a Docker. This particular command will send a container logs to a some remote system log server. It's one of the great way to centralize your logs and securing the logs also. And Docker learn -f log driver. This is the centralized log mechanism, and log opt system log address, and this was the address of this log server. And here we will be discussing about some of the monitor and act on the logs. So setting up of alerts for the logs and some regular analysis. We need to make sure to set up the alerts for the logs. Let's say failed login attempts was there. So with the help of setting up the alerts, uh, let's say if there is any failed login attempt was occurred, that will trigger the alert and privilege escalations. Let's say if someone get a elevated or some root permissions, you need to know immediately. And this particular privilege escalation alerts are critical for stopping the insider threats. And the third point was unusual network activity. We need to make sure to watch for unexpected traffics, and we need to make sure to scan the ports and some outbound connectivities or any network access is given. So basically, what this does was this will often highlight for the if there is any lateral movements, or it will send kind of a alert when there is any lateral movement is happened. The fourth point here was container crashes. So we need to make sure to uh, let's say if there is any container was crashed or restarted, by setting up the alert, it will get to know like this particular container was tracked. We need to make sure like what is the reason behind that, or by making a external log activity mechanism, this alert can be triggered. Why? Because by default the containers are ephemeral, and that let's say if it was crashed or restarted, it cannot be stored the logs inside that. So we can see the alerts to investigate further and quicker. Okay. And the final point here was critical application errors. You need to make sure don't ignore your critical errors. They can indicate your bugs or some misconfigurations, or even like denial of services, or some DOS attacks also. And here are the some regular analysis. We need to make sure to review the logs weekly for patterns, and It will basically helps to see a schedule to review the logs weekly and look for trends or some anomalies or some patterns will be visible with these helps. Okay, and the next point was we can use automated correlation tools, tools like uh, some SIEM tools can correlate the events across the system, and that will highlight a suspicious behavior automatically. Create your dashboards for key metrics. Dashboards will basically helps to visualize the log data like error rates, some login attempts, or a resource use, system resource uses. They can make the monitoring very much easier and faster to detect the issue. And the final point was train teams on log interpretation. That means we need to make sure your team knows how to read and act on the logs. This basically helps to improve the response time of the incidents, and that will reduce the false positives also. And here's the one of the pro tip, like logs are only valuable if someone is watching them. Okay, let's say if there is no alert mechanism or no one is watching on that, then you are just storing unnecessary things, right? There is no use of that. So we need to make sure proper alert mechanism and regular analysis of the logs is to be done. Okay, so then only there is a proper utilization of that logging mechanism. Okay, and here are some key takeaways and a kind of a recap, whatever we have discussed till now. These are the some essential points we need to be remembered. First one was centralize the log and all logs. That means don't store them locally on your containers. Uh, as I said earlier also, like whenever the containers are restarted, the logs will disappear. Okay, always make a habit to send your logs to your external systems for durability and visibility purpose. And the second point was prevent the log integrity. That means secure the permissions and access controls. So use a strict policy or permissions and RBAC, we can say role based access control, to prevent unauthorized changes in the logs. And the third point was never log secrets. That means keep the sensitive data out of logs. It's a one of the major security and compliance risk. Okay, and the fourth point was set up the monitoring. That means logs without all alerts or just a storage. That means we need to properly set up a alert mechanism as well as uh, frequently uh, analyze the audits or view the analyze and view the uh, logs. Okay, so that will helps to, I mean, that will helps more. And the final point was test regularly. That means ensure logging works when you need it. Okay, so it's like a kind of simulation or drill. We need to make sure to run each and every time, or else some random times we need to make sure the logs are getting generated. And if there is any like high pressure environment also, it is getting properly doing it works. Okay, so if let's say any future we need a logs, then without any further setups or further investigation, we will directly go and view the logs. Okay, if there is a good logging mechanism, then that system have a better security. Okay, so yeah, these are the things we will be discussing in this particular video. I think by this we covered all top 10. Let's just a kind of a list. D01, which is secure user mapping. D02, patch management strategy. D03, network segmentation and firewalling. D04, secure defaults and hardening. D05, maintain security contexts. D06, protecting the secrets. 7, resource protection. 8, container integrity, container image integrity. 9, follow the immutable paradigm. And finally 10, this is logging. Okay, and yeah, we'll be coming up with a new another series soon. And something new we'll be learning more. Okay, and yeah, stay tuned for more videos. Thank you.